Good afternoon. This is Felicity, and I'm speaking to you from my library. And it's been a couple of minutes since I last did a video. A lot of stuff happened. I went back to work. Look at that. Got 2 new knees. Go back to work. And that's a good thing, I guess. Anyway, so I have a little catching up to do, and I thought I might as well do some catching up here online with my friends who I don't think I've ever met any of you, but there you are. You're all out there reading books and doing what I'm doing. So I thought that this afternoon I would go over some of the books that I have been enjoying. I've finished some books that I've been enjoying that I'm still working my way through, and some books that I am looking forward very much to reading in the near future. So I'll start with what I've been reading. I think the last time I checked in was sometime in September, so there's a couple of things here. First of all, I finished my absolutely delectable reread of Borges' collected fictions. Now, as I read through this, I realized there were a few that I had not read before, so this was a real treat. A lot of them, of course, I know really well, like The Library of Babel and Orbis Tertius and Funes and Memorias, and a variety of other ones, but reading through the whole set from start to finish was great, and I would do it again in a flash, but I have a bunch of other books that I'm planning on reading, so this will wait till it's settled down a bit, and then I'm sure I'm going to enjoy them again. So thank you, Mr. Borges, Senor Borges. That was great. Another one on a very different line that I finished, kind of whipped through. I've been acquiring a whole bunch of books by H.G. Wells, both fiction and nonfiction. This is nonfiction, and I'm gradually making my way through them. The new plan is read the books I have. I do have a few, and I need to stop acquiring books at such a ferocious rate and read the ones I have. That's a great idea, right? We'll see how that works out. Anyway, World Brain is a set of essays. There's a set of essays that were written down, but these were all mostly lectures and speeches that Wells had given regarding his brainchild, his great idea of having a library that was accessible by the entire world all the time. It was like an encyclopedia that would be constantly updating. Now, this was all written back then. These were the last one was I think written just before World War II started in. And the dates are 1936, 1937, and the last one I think was in September 12th of 37. So here's a dude that totally and utterly predated the internet, and that's what his idea was. Although his idea was that there would be experts who were dispassionate and not prejudiced, and hopefully were scientists or experts in their field who would be able to have intelligent discourses on various subjects, which would be everything that anybody would want to know. He also had some interesting ideas about childhood education, which at that time was not super well received, except by a few. And his ideas were pretty far out at the time, but now I look at this and we look at this and we think, well, yeah, we're kind of doing it now, sort of. Although our Wikipedia is not exactly what he had in mind. Our Wikipedia is kind of like this barrage of encyclopedia that anybody can edit any of the time. But as far as I'm concerned, that's probably just about the best that we have, that everybody who has access to the internet can have access to for free. And it was fascinating reading about Wells's ideas about this universal encyclopedia that would be updated all the time, that would keep all these scientists and people occupied, would keep people reading, would keep people's minds open. Oh, there's an idea. And some pretty modern ideas about how children should be educated as opposed to how they were still being educated at this time. So this is well worth reading. I'm not sure if I'll read it again. Who knows? I don't give away books much, and I do find sometimes that I go back and I say, wait, didn't I read that in something before? I need to read it again. Anyway, so this was essays, The World Brain by Wells. And again, on a very different note, I was really savoring Dunsany's The Ghosts of the Heaviside Layer. I love Dunsany. Sorry about the glare there. And this was a reprint and printing for the first time by a really, really lovely Pennsylvania press. What is it about Pennsylvania and Philadelphia? They have some really awesome small press operations. This one, I know I've probably showed this here once before, but this is this was the Owlswick Press in Philadelphia. And it covers a fairly wide span of time. There's a lot of later pieces in this, but what it also covers, which I don't have anything else like this, is it has stories, it has poems, it has essays. So it has, and plays. It has 2 plays in it as well. So it has a series, not poetry, sorry, it does not have that. It has stories, essays, and plays. And I haven't really read any of his essays, so that was kind of a treat. It's really interesting, kind of getting the flavor of his writing from earlier times when he was very ebullient and optimistic and fantastical, and reading some of his later works where he kind of got a bit darker. A lot of them were written after a fair amount of water had ferociously gone under the bridge in Ireland and also in the world. And he kind of rode the wave. He kind of made some decisions about how he was going to be political, apolitical, and I think he did come out the other side okay. But his writing got very different as he got older. So a lot of our fantasists today and in the last 50 years or so who absolutely adored Dunsany's early writing said, oh, his later work wasn't quite the thing because it was so much more realistic and so much darker and earthier. And I say, huzzah, Dunsany. It added a very different dimension to my appreciation for his work. I'm very happy to have read this, and it will be getting another reading because there was some really tasty bits in it. 1 or 2 of them. I think I've already read 1 essay from here, but there may be one of the stories that I pick up. There was one very funny line. It was from the title story, which was The Ghosts of the Heaviside Layer. And at the very end of the story, the owner of this castle was just like this whole thing where he had engaged the services of the scientists to get rid of the ghosts that were plaguing him in this house that he'd purchased. So the scientists came up with a device that, boy, it sure got rid of them. But unfortunately, what it did was it bounced off the Heaviside Layer, and all of them, his and everybody else's ghosts, came back and haunted his castle, and he had the worst night of his life. Anyway, so he, having a discussion after all of this with the scientist, says to his friend, he says, I want you to promise me one thing, he said to Glade. Yes, said Glade. I want you to promise, said Nietzscheans, never to say a word about this to anyone. Well, yes, replied Glade, but it's a pity. I'd have liked to have talked it over with 1 or 2 men. It's interesting. Well, not for a few weeks, said Nietzscheans. Will you promise me? Very well, said Glade, if you like. Why? And Nietzscheans glanced up for a moment at the high rafters. Because I was thinking of selling the place, he said. Okay, that's pretty good stuff. Another one that I just finished today is one that I've been savoring for a little while, and that's John Muir's Travels in Alaska. This covers the period of, I think, 1876 to 1890, and 3 trips to Alaska. The last trip in 1890, he was actually kind of getting up there in years. It's wonderful. Muir was, of course, the indefatigable proponent, advocate for unspoiled land in California and in Alaska, and was the founder of the Sierra Club. And although there's a lot of controversy about some of the various organizations, I don't think there's any controversy about Muir, who absolutely had conviction. He believed 100% that this needed to be done, that here we are in this gorgeous country that we're busy spoiling, and we needed to stop. And he did his very, very best to not only stop it, educate people, but hopefully set up some institutions that would slow down the insatiable desire of people here to spoil unspoiled land. It's beautiful. He's looking at the southern Alaska and as far north as he could get, and he's mostly traveling with the native Indians from the tribes up in that area, and going around and looking at the glaciers and studying the glaciers and studying the land around them, and trying, and with a great deal of naturalist knowledge, trying to figure out how did they come to be? How long had they been there? How were they decaying? How were they growing? And altogether, an absolutely gorgeous book. It's an interesting style of writing because, of course, we don't write that way anymore, and more is the pity. It's beautiful. He was a religious man, but not a dyed-in-the-wool religious man. He wanted to believe the best of people, but he realized that that was not always so, and he viewed the unspoiled and natural landscape with reverence, and as a gift. So I really appreciated this. Just finished that this morning and thought, yeah, I have a couple of other by Muir. I'll probably be reading some. So this was a log. It was a diary. He did keep notes, sketches while he was on his trip, and then after he finished each of the particular expeditions, he would sort of settle down for a few weeks and write up all his notes while they were still fresh. So although it reads like a diary, like a log, it's clearly been fleshed out so that he's not just like slapping in there whatever he had, what he was like freezing or boiling or whatever he was on his expedition. Well worth the effort of reading, and it wasn't that much effort. It was just gorgeous. Last chapter in it, the last essay in there is he's describing this as I think he's in his late 60s by that point, and he's describing the very last. The last essay, or the last section of this, he's describing the auroras that he saw with his companions that were with him. Just wonderful. And he must have been getting really tired and starting to feel his age, and yet he describes them with joy. Anyway, thanks, John Muir. That was great. All right, so the next thing that kind of started, this was one of my one of the books that I decided that it was going to be my 8 books that I would bring on the desert island that Shanti Standfast has been has been gathering folks into his multi-dimensional island. This is Jacques Barzun's From Dawn to Decadence, and I'm a huge fan of Jacques Barzun. I think he's a marvelous writer and a really great historian, and this is excellent work, and is one that I've been meaning to read for some time, so it would have made a great desert island book, but I'm not planning on getting actually stranded on any desert islands in the near future or even distant future. So I thought, I got those books, I'm gonna read them. They were all books that need to be read, and so so I started reading this one, and I am really enjoying it. So this is so he says From Dawn to Decadence, and of course the subtitle is 1500 to the present. So yeah, not the dawn of time, but the dawn of Western history, from what we consider as being the beginning of our modern Western culture, and that's what he talks about. It's great, and I'm not going to weigh in on it too much yet because I've just really begun, and no, I have not read this before, so it's been in my library for quite a while, and I'm reading it now. So this has just begun, From Dawn to Decadence by Jacques Barzun. Another one that I have just begun again, and this is an anticipation of the highly anticipated event that's going to be happening next year with Jason Harrigan. And that is the EcoFiction event, where we are going to read all of the novels by Umberto Eco. So, yeah, I'm not getting a head start. I'm just getting myself into the spirit and the delight of reading Umberto Eco's fiction all over again. I've got them all, just waiting for Jason to start. But I remember actually reading this a couple of times, and I think the second or third time I read this, I got out my notebook and I wrote down, this was a long time ago, every single word and phrase in Latin, and I looked them all up because I was not going to be defeated by Umberto Eco's very, very, very educated and lucid prose. I was going to get it all. So just begin again. This is the, I had a really worn out copy of, the copy that I had was a mass market paperback, and before I read it, but after I'd read it a few times, I discarded that. And this is my first time reading this particular edition. It's great. It has the postscript. So I don't think I read that, so that'll be something new. And I'll probably get out that old notebook and figure out what all the Latin is again, because I'm supposed to be learning Latin again. We'll see how that's working out. Anyway, Name of the Rose by Eco, of course. Right. Speaking of Eco, some months ago I had a wonderful video. I really enjoyed that. I've watched myself a couple of times. Like, yeah, what am I waiting for? I displayed the charms of my entire collection of Eco, and so I decided a little while ago that I was going to start going through every single book of essays by Eco in my collection and read them all from beginning to end. And I'm doing that. Some are going to be very, very serious rereads, like this little guy here, which I can't remember how many times I've read How to Travel with a Salmon and other essays, and it's hilarious. And this is the third copy of this book I have owned because, not because they wore out, because I would lend them to somebody. Oh, you really have to read this. Oh, you don't know about Eco's essays? Oh, well, you'll have to read this. It's great. And I never got it back again. I guess that says something, eh? How to Travel with a Salmon and other essays. Yeah, I'm going to save that for when I need a little cheering up, because these are laugh aloud funny. I think I said that in the last video too. Another one that I'm looking forward to rereading is Misreadings. I think I read this fairly recently last year, and I'm going to read it again because it, like How to Travel with a Salmon, is delightful. It's not quite as hilariously funny as How to Travel with a Salmon. I may read that one out loud at some point. It's just I can't stand it. It's too funny. This one actually does have some pretty good ones. These are slightly longer essays. Some of them. Oh, it's gonna be great. Regret for Muir turning off. He does one essay in this one, which is, yeah, if somebody were submitting a book like the Bible, or Dante was submitting his Divine Comedy to a modern publisher for the first time, it would be rejected. And he has some rejection slips, which is pretty funny. Anyway, so the third one that I am planning to reread soon is the 6 Walks into Fictional Woods. I read this one a few years ago. Really enjoyed it. There was one essay in particular, which was the Woods of Dunsany, which was a discussion of Sylvie, and that I think was the first time that I realized that there was a short novel by Nerval entitled Sylvie. And at that point, I tried to find a copy, and I found it online because, of course, it was published in, I forget, 18 something or other, and was not interested in that. And I wanted to find a copy, and I wanted to actually have it in my hands. I did not want to buy it online. I wanted to find it in a bookstore or something. Didn't. And then serendipitously, this last year, one of my colleagues at work said, "Oh, Felicity, I've got a bunch of books from a member of my family, and well, I know you like books. Are you interested in these?" And I said, "Well, duh." Is the Polish Bear Shed in the Woods? And he said, "Well, I don't know. Some of these look kind of like ancient and crusty." And my eyes opened. I said, "This Sylvie by Nerval. Do you know how long I've been looking for this?" And he said, "This little thing looks like a kind of a goofy romance to me." I was like, no. So I read it immediately, and I said, I see what Eco was talking about. So again, on the serendipity level, this is the one that I'm currently working my way through, which is Eco on Literature. And one of the essays in there is The Mists of the Valois. So I'm reading that, and he says at the beginning, he says, "Well, you know what, if you haven't read Sylvie, or if you haven't reread Sylvie recently, you should do that before you read this essay." And I said, "Well, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to read the essay." And then I'm reading it and going like, this is I recognize the main thrust of the essay from having read this one and have Sylvie introduced to me for the first time. but he deepens his essay. The essay deepens my understanding of his understanding of Sylvie, and definitely makes me want to read Sylvie again, and makes me want to read the previous essay from 6 Walks in a Fictional Wood. So in this this volume of essays, these are all on literary topics, books, and what's kind of interesting also is that he, in the course of many of these essays, he introduces some of the themes that he enlarges on to very great effect in his novels. So as I'm going through, I'm kind of trying to pick out, oh, was this one from the Island of the Day Before? Oh, I bet this one was one of the ones that fed Name of the Rose. Prague Cemetery. I'll need to read that one again because I don't remember that bit. There you go. So this is one that I'm currently working my way through now. Having a lot of fun with that. So this is my, I'm going to call this my eco-essay binge. Well, it's not a binge. I mean, I'm not like reading day and night because I have to go work. It's my eco-essays. Eco-essay non-event. How's that? So these are 2 that I've just recently finished. Echo's Inventing the Enemy, which was a series of semi-political, not really political, just kind of like Echo being Echo, with a variety of different things. And Inventing the Enemy was the title essay. And he talks about that is a little bit more political. He talks about how we perceive ourselves, how we perceive the people who are our friends, and how we decide who is our enemy. Interesting, kind of scary. Yeah, Echo did think about things. What a guy. He's a thinker. What's my favorite one here? Oh, yeah. Ulysses. That's all we needed. And it's a pastiche of quotes from critics back in the 20s on Ulysses. And then he kind of strings them all together like beads on a fairly dreadful necklace. They're great. They're awful. I loved it. I'm going like, this is hilarious. Oh no, poor Joyce. Joyce doesn't care. Joyce didn't care. Why the Island is Never Found. So that was actually poetic. He's talking about Iland Perdita. I forget how this is the name for it. Why the Island is Never Found. Insula Perdita, of course. Insula Perdita. And then he discusses different kinds of unfound islands, islands that were found and then were never found again, islands that were mistaken for something else, islands that existed as something else, and islands that were never found. So there was so many wonderful essays in this, but there's so many wonderful essays on all of them. So this one, I think my favorite funny one was probably Ulysses, That's All We Needed. And my favorite one overall, I think, was, let me get to here again. I think my favorite one overall might have been Treasure Hunting. It's hard to pick because Fermented Delights is pretty good too. Not to mention Imaginary Astronomies. All right, okay, and the last finished. So this is the last Echo essay collection that I just finished, which was Travels in Hyperreality. The title essay being a rather bizarre trip through the United States looking at bizarre things. It's a little pointed. I mean, I'm an American, and I'm going like, oh, come on, dude, would you ever chill for a little bit? But he does start. He's somewhat thoughtful. He talks about the fact that most Americans are reinventing themselves, and he kind of enjoys some of that. But yeah, okay, that was pretty good. Return of the Middle Ages. He quotes, and here, this is rereading some of these. I have a lot more knowledge than I did then. I know who Huizinga is now. That's great. Gods of the Underworld was kind of scary. Reports from the Global Village, definitely political. Then he had an essay on Casablanca that was great, and I'm not even a movie person, and it made me want to go and watch it. I think I watched it once. I thought, yeah, it's a movie, but reading his essay on Casablanca definitely made me want to go and really, really look at it. And then the Consolatione Philosophiae, which of course is Boethius's the Constellation of Philosophy, which he wrote while he was in prison waiting to be tortured and executed. And he talks about St. Thomas Aquinas, which he, I believe, did his thesis on when he was a young fella. Also, the De Interpretatione, which I really was not expecting at all. So this is an older one, very, very echo. This is not really funny. These were actually really serious essays, although there was definitely humorous bits because Echo can't help himself. He's a pretty funny guy when he's not being hyper intelligent. As Taub says, Echo is one of the very few non-dull people in the world. There you go. So thank you. That's what I've been reading. That's what I have read. And hopefully I'll make another video before a month and a half has passed again. But for now, I will bid you bye-bye and thank you for watching and see you next time.